We live in a hyper-rational, globally connected era. We hold supercomputers in our pockets and use the scientific method to decode everything from genetic sequencing to orbital mechanics. Yet, in the middle of all this technological clarity, a quiet ideological crisis is unfolding. A 2023 Gallup survey shows South Korean Protestant affiliation dropping to 15%, while no religion surged past 51%. Yet this spike isn't pure atheism. Instead, we see a massive boom in meditation apps, mindfulness retreats, and Eastern philosophies. Researchers call this rapidly growing group SBNR, spiritual but not religious. It is becoming the defining characteristic of 21st century youth. Only about 22% of people in their 20s identify with a specific religion. This creates a severe friction point. Millions of young people are wandering with a genuine spiritual thirst. They actively search for meaning, yet decisively reject the traditional institutions that historically offered to quench it. The modern exodus targets the outdated language and institutional rigidity surrounding faith, even as the underlying spiritual hunger remains. People haven't stopped looking for the divine. They have simply concluded that the ancient vocabulary used to describe it no longer makes sense. To understand why that vocabulary is failing, we must examine its theological engine. For 1,500 years, a specific framework has driven traditional faith. Think of it as the Fear OS, an operating system built heavily on the burden of original sin, the constant threat of final judgment, and the terrifying concept of hell. Compare that ancient operating system to a modern student. They demand empirical evidence, strict logical consistency, and the scientific method. When tradition presents a model of a distant, judging God, a deity confined somewhere up there in a three-dimensional heaven, managing a timeline from the ancient past to an apocalyptic future, the modern mind mathematically and logically rejects it. The spatial logic of this ancient model completely conflicts with everything we know today about how the physical universe actually works. In his analysis, scientist and theologian Ryo Kim proposes a structural solution, a third reformation. Following shifts led by the 1st century church and the 16th century reformers, we've reached the exact historical coordinate where a new conceptual framework is required. Minor institutional patches or stylistic updates to weekend services cannot solve this crisis. The entire operating system of faith requires a ground-up rewrite, using a language that harmonizes completely with the modern understanding of reality. Updating this operating system starts by throwing out the old maps. We must redefine the physical address of the divine using modern physics. Albert Einstein's theories of relativity dismantled the idea that time and space are absolute barriers. In a block universe, past, present, and future exist simultaneously. That breakdown of distance gained scientific weight with the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics. The award proved the reality of quantum entanglement, a phenomenon where separated particles interact instantaneously, completely ignoring physical space. These discoveries provide a new lens for an ancient concept, the Eden Love Field, or ELF. While not a measurable particle, it acts as a heuristic lattice, an omnipresent energy woven into our universe. When we accept that information and influence exist everywhere at once at the quantum level, the old model of a distant ruler collapses. God moves from being a character in the sky to being the very medium through which all things are entangled right now. Defining God as a physical field of love doesn't destroy ancient spiritual traditions. Instead, it sublimates them. It elevates thousands of years of human philosophy into a single, unified theory. The unbroken nature of the Eden Love Field aligns perfectly with concepts we've explored for millennia. The deep internal silence sought in Buddhism and the natural flow of the Tao map flawlessly onto this omnipresent frequency. This directly leads to the foundational concept of the fragment of God. If we are part of this interconnected fabric, the breath of life described in Genesis exists as a literal part of our internal architecture. It acts as a precision internal tuner, already set perfectly to the omnipresent frequency of the love field. The search for the divine stops being an outward, fear-driven journey across the cosmos to appease a distant judge. It becomes an inward recognition of the gravitational field of love you already possess. The heaviest failure of the old Fear OS was the massive disconnect between Sunday worship and the Monday to Friday reality. The rules of the weekend rarely survived contact with the stress of the workplace. Running the new Love OS is a daily, highly practical exercise. It means consciously tuning your internal decision-making to the frequency of the Eden love field, right in the middle of a chaotic Tuesday afternoon. When you align with that frequency, you unlock white pain. This process actively converts daily workplace friction and stress into spiritual fuel. Operating under white pain takes the normal, heavy struggles of a career and strips away the meaningless suffering. The pressure doesn't disappear, but it gets repurposed into profound personal growth. This recentering of faith rescues it from the dusty shelf of passive weekend obligations. It turns spiritual life into an active, resilient engine built specifically to navigate daily life. Religion functions as a tool for recognizing a universe already saturated in love. Its purpose is the realization that we are held by a deliberately crafted energy field. In this framework, human happiness behaves like a physical law, generated naturally whenever our daily choices align with that field. Even death changes its shape. It represents a transition to the next coordinate in space-time, a simple movement within the block universe rather than a terrifying finality. The ultimate promise of the Third Reformation is quiet yet absolute. By abandoning the fear OS, the friction of your entire daily existence simply becomes an ongoing, uninterrupted conversation with the divine.